Welcome to the dungeon. Dum dum dum. We have Charisse back, as you could have expected.
I think it's so funny how you're like, welcome to the dungeon with this huge, cute smile on your face. Like, who smiles in a dungeon, Shader?
I get in trouble for smiling sometimes. Like, I'll go to a funeral and I'm like a big smile.
What exactly is inspiring the smile at the funeral? I'm really interested.
The thing is, if I am okay, I'm smiling.
Mm,
I think even if I'm not okay, I'm also smiling. I
mm-hmm.
need to be really angry and bawling my eyes out that I don't smile. But even when I'm bawling my eyes out, as soon as I reach that point, because I feel like sometimes crying, you reach a climax, just like orgasms,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden everything's okay. As soon as that happens, I'm smiling again.
So it just sounds like you have a healthy range of emotional expression. And maybe the rest
Yeah.
of us are not quite on the same page. So that's why we're like, why is she smiling? It's interesting that you say that, smiling is just your default because I've
Hmm.
also been thinking about that. Sometimes in the world, when I go out in the world, I do try to make sure I'm in a good energy. And it's not
Hmm.
necessarily for anybody else, but for me, it's almost like getting dressed. So, at
Okay.
home, you'll probably wear whatever. At home, I'll
Hmm.
wear any mood. But when I'm going out, I intentionally try to be very present and grateful. And I've been feeling that in Jamaica recently. Like I'll go out and I maybe I'm not smiling, but I definitely have a pleasant look on my face because I
Hmm.
am pleased with the trees and the light and the sunshine and the taxis and whatever. But I've noticed it's definitely not the default for people, and people do
No.
kind of look at me kind of weird. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was in a bank, I saw this lady coming in, and she had a huge frown on her face, and I was just like, man, it's interesting how what's normal for us is to be in a state of dissatisfaction oftentimes, in
Yeah.
society. And especially because I'm working with intentional living and I'm trying to be more intentional and conscious about how I'm living, I understand that a lot of time that's just a change of mindset. Discipline, it takes discipline work, but it is a
Hmm.
change of mindset to be able to say, no, I don't want to stay in a state of dissatisfaction. I would like to explore staying in a state of satisfaction. And there is always something I have found, no matter what is going on, there is often, I can't say because maybe there are horrible situations where it's not possible, but there is often something to feel satisfied about in any moment, even if
Yeah.
there is many things to be dissatisfied about.
Yeah.
What are you satisfied about these days? Give me three things.
I'm highly satisfied about reconnecting with some of my friends, friends that I met while traveling as a missionary. That has been filling my heart up so hardcore. Um, I'm also satisfied with how calm I am right now. We're going to talk about that later, but I feel like there's no direction in my life right now. And I'm so calm about it, which has come from doing a lot of breath work. And the third thing is I'm glad we have these conversations, to be honest. Like, it's grounding every time we record a podcast. And I'm kind of like low key wishing it would not be episode, what, I think this is seven or eight. That I'm
Of us
like,
together. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, low key don't want it to end. Actually,
Mm.
somebody, a listener told me, can't you extend your time with Cherise?
I think you said that and I didn't respond. I'm going to need a break after the 10 episodes. I just want to say this has been, I actually did mention this to you privately. I actually haven't listened to the last two episodes
Yeah.
because in the moment, yes, these are beautiful conversations and discussions to be having, but they are of my real life experience.
Hmm.
And so felt too emotionally challenging for me to listen to the last couple of episodes. So emotionally, I'm stretched, and I know I'm
Yeah.
going to need a break. So I'm sorry to that listener, but that's not going to be happening right away, if at all.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, but no, I agree with these conversations as well. And last week we didn't record. I mean, so our listeners don't really know our recording schedule, but we didn't record last week, and I missed you. I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah,
messaging
me
you. I'm like,
too.
"Oh, Shady, I miss you." Yeah, so I also
Yeah.
appreciate our
And I
time.
want to thank you for being open and honest with the things that you share. You know, it's interesting because these stories are not things that you hear often about. The people that tend to be queer, pansexual, polyamorous, or even people that have been disowned by their families tend to stay quiet. They tend to stay in the shadows. And that's why you don't hear about them. It's also really hard to speak up. So I applaud your bravery. I applaud you opening up and sharing. And even though for some people it might seem like, oh, it's just a story, it's you, as you said, it's your real life. It is the pain you've gone through and the pain that you still carry
Mm-hmm.
because of all of
Absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Well, this makes me think about this idea of how talking about our pain sometimes feels important.
Mm-hmm.
You say my bravery, it almost felt necessary. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just something about the way I'm wired, but there is something in me that I I strive for truth, even if it's unconventional or inconvenient truth. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something about the gray area that people sometimes live in, where, for example, in Jamaica, as a homophobic country, there are many people who you may know or suspect are not straight,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody really talks about it. It's kind of like a but you don't know sort of situation. And I'm not saying that everybody's personal life has to be out there on the street, but there is something about the silence that isn't innocent. There's a silence that can just be
Mm.
innocent. There's a silence that we don't talk about it because it's not really necessary. Like we don't go around talking about our shit or our poop, because it's not really
I
that
do
necessary.
sometimes.
But we do sometimes, but it's not like sometimes it's because of shame, but it's also just like we know everybody does it,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But there is something about how we don't talk about her sexuality that's laced with shame,
Yes.
which, from my personal experience, I couldn't be quiet about anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to speak personally. Like it could have been a completely selfish thing. I needed to speak because I needed to feel heard. Like I'm not crazy for being a sexual being. I am not
Mm-hmm.
evil for having sexual desire, whatever that desire is. And it needed to be said. What's curious now is now that a lot of it has been said and shared, and I've talked a lot about my identity, my sexual identity quite publicly, there's a part of me that because I've been excommunicated from my family and I've had to become very emotionally independent, I sort of don't need to talk about those things anymore. And I kind of sort of don't need people to really
Mm-hmm.
understand me anymore. And there was some aspect of it that could have felt like, yeah, I'm talking about this because the conversation needs to be had on like a community level. But I also think a big part of it, motivation wise, was just selfishly, I needed to speak. Like it was an
Yeah.
urge, it was an urge. I needed to speak. And I do have a belief that, or words both guide our truth and reveal our truths. So the things we say, I I sometimes listen to what I say even when I say something by accident. I'm like, what truth could that thing be revealing?
Yeah.
And then you also use that awareness to start tweaking what you do say and what you do speak to know what you want to create. So, all of that to say, I'm thank you for acknowledging my bravery. And also, it's yeah, it is a challenge. It is a challenge um to show up and keep showing up authentically sometimes, especially based on the cost. 2 episodes ago we spoke about the price and the prize of
Mm-hmm.
authenticity. And last episode we spoke about coming home, and I'm now home in Jamaica, and I'm being confronted daily with the
Yeah.
price,
Yeah.
right? I don't have access to my family. I'm reestablishing roots in Jamaica as a single adult. Yes, and I'm an adult, and that's great. And I have support system of friends, but there is a big gaping hole where my family support used to be,
Mm-hmm.
which brings up this idea of what now, what motivates me to do anything if in the past there was always at least this reference point. It's not to say my family was a thing that motivated everything, but it was a
Mm-hmm.
reference point. And kind of existing in this void space, and what do I do now, where it's like I've been a traveler for 5 years. It seems like I'm pausing that now, but I don't really know. You just spoke about being at a place in your life where you're not so sure where the direction is, and I guess we can
Yeah.
label that the void. And I'd love us to explore, like, what do we do when we find ourselves in a void moment in life? And
Yeah.
how would you define that void?
For me, the void is a place where you're not sure what direction to take. Now, a lot of people and a lot of the teachings, even in self-development, will tell you, "Oh, just pick something, just do something. Just go somewhere and do something." However, I feel like if you're in line and in tune with your intuition or the voice of God or that inkling, gut feeling within you, sometimes you know that there is nothing, right? There is no, oh, this is where I need to go. There, you can choose, obviously, but when you're living from that space of inner guidance and you're guided by your soul and what's inside of you, sometimes there's nothing. And it's
That sounds
very
so depressing.
uncomfortable.
There's like nothing inside of you.
It can be depressing. It can. But I think because I've experienced it so much, it's not depressing to me. I know. So I'm in that space right now, right? Let me explain what's happening. So I've been a coach online for the longest time, a business coach at first. Then I labeled myself a freedom alchemist and I help people find freedom. I still do that. I don't necessarily have clients right now, but other things have been coming into my reality. One of the things for sure that came into my reality this year is this podcast that I didn't plan to. It started a little bit as a joke, as like Andy and I were talking all the time, like, let's just share our talks with the world. And it became something bigger with like a lot of people listening and people expecting episodes and me
Mm-hmm.
enjoying it. Um, so that's like, the life just took a U-turn all of a sudden. Um, but yeah, there's so much that I'm doing. I launched a Papiamento course, which wasn't expected. I have my memoir that I'm writing that I haven't written a word in a couple of months. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but none of these things right now in this moment feel like the thing that I need to focus on at another level. Obviously, I'm maintaining everything, making sure everything's in place. We're still recording podcast episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But right now in my life, I don't know what I need to focus on. Nothing feels like the thing. And again, it can
Mm-hmm.
sound depressing and it is very confusing in my body because we've been ingrained to always be doing something. What's your goal? What's your plan? What's your vision? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it right now, and I'm okay with not having it. The reason why I'm okay with not having it is every time I've been in this space, what came out of it was like next level. And I'm waiting for that next level thing to come to me. And I'm maintaining the space for it. Because if I don't, if I just like willy nilly go do something, one, it's hard and uncomfortable. But two, I'm taking space for the thing that needs to come.
What do you mean when you say you're maintaining the space for whatever it is that's coming? What does that look like?
It's literally maintaining space in my schedule, not taking on another project or focusing on
Mm,
something that does not feel good to me in that moment. And it feels like I'm doing nothing. Like the past few days, I've been helping my friend out with his resume and applying for a job. And as I'm doing it, I'm like, what is this? Like I'm not a career expert. I'm not really good at these things, but I'm definitely better than him. So
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm helping him. But that doesn't fit into anything that I want to do long term or what I've done before
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. When I think of maintaining space for whatever is to come, I think of maintaining rituals.
Hmm.
Um, I got this idea when I was traveling. So I've been traveling up until this, well, yes, still technically traveling. In the last, how many years have I been traveling? 5 years, basically.
Yeah.
I would guesstimate that I've lived in one home house building, Airbnb, apartment, whatever it is, on average, 4 months, maybe five,
Yeah.
on average. Some longer, some shorter, but on average. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
moving,
Yeah.
I've been nomadic, and it's been clear to me that the thing that makes it easier for me to feel a sense of stability whenever that move happens is that I have some sort of ritual that is portable. So, um, if it's for me, it includes getting up in the morning, setting a little altar wherever it is I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually easy enough. Lighting my altar, saying my prayers, moving my body a little bit, journaling, drinking some tea. That's sort of part of what that is. And I will say sometimes I lose it when I travel because the
Yeah.
space may not feel conducive or that kind of stuff. And when I lose it, which I felt I lost it in the last 2 months, I've been in Jamaica for about 3 months, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe about 6 weeks in a new place.
Yeah.
So I spent 6 weeks in one place and now I'm in another place 6 weeks. This new place that I'm in, I felt disconnected from my ritual. And I think it's triggered me feeling like I'm in the void. Or maybe I'm just in the void, whatever it
Yeah. Yeah.
is. But there is definitely this feeling of like, I don't know what's next. And I suppose the reason I'm talking about this is I would love to explore with you and with our listeners the idea of what do we do when we don't know what's next. Not saying I have answers, but just exploring. I don't know what's next, but I do know what I have set as focal points for the past 2 years of my life. So I'm a multi-potentialite. You and I, human design, we're manifesting generators. We
Mm-hmm.
understand that creative projects pop up like a dime a dozen, right? For us.
Yes.
And I've been testing. You've seen me be a little rigid with it, but I've been testing what happens if I don't get too distracted by new projects and I try to keep focus on 1 to 3. And I have 3 projects that I've been focusing on for the past year, and I'll feel distracted or I might go between the three, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. And so in the void where I'm gonna live feels unclear because I've been back in Jamaica and something in my bones is saying it's not time to leave yet. So
Yeah.
where I'm living feels unclear. What's happening with my music career feels unclear because that's one of the projects I have. The other two are things I can work on. So my 3 projects are money, make as much money as possible,
Mm-hmm.
build myself as a musical performing artist, and work on my health and beauty. Those are the three things that I'm focused on. And though it sort of feels like, yeah, but where's the real project? Like, what's the real music project? Or what's the real, I don't know, where are you gonna live? Where are your clients coming from? All of that feels like there's so much questions. What I am thinking is just keep doing the basic stuff. Like you just get
Yeah.
up and you keep moving. So you get up. If health and beauty is one of it, go move your body. Maybe you don't
Mm-hmm.
have a photo shoot yet that you're going to be booked for, but who knows? You could get called one for one tomorrow. You're going to want to be
Yes.
ready.
Yeah.
Um, get up and practice your scales and work on your voice. Maybe you don't have a show or a lineup or even an idea of where your career is going, but you never know what opportunities might come up. So for me, as much as when I'm in this state of I don't really know what's next, my instinct is just become a couch potato. That's my instinct, is like just do nothing. I'm trying to work on no, just keep the discipline of the things that will make you prepared to respond. So that for me, that's what
Mm,
space is. It's like making sure that I'm in a position, I'm ready, I'm staying ready so I don't have to get ready whenever whatever it is makes itself known. And
I-
also, the staying ready often leads you to the next step.
yes. A
It
hundred percent.
often does. So it's like, the intention is, I don't really know where I'm going. The idea could be, I don't know where I'm going, so I'm not going to do anything. But it's like, okay, well, what's the one next step you can take in this direction? And actually, that's what inspired me to move to Tulum. I have a big, big, big life dream of hosting retreats around the world and creating retreat centers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in central Mexico thinking, okay, I have no idea how that's going to happen, but what's the one next step I could do? And I was like, well, maybe I could go to a space where a lot of people are doing that. Like maybe I can move to a place
Yeah.
where a lot of people are doing that and just be there and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to many other different things, right?
Mm.
So, yeah, what's the immediate step that you can take, even if you don't really know exactly where it will lead?
That reminds me a lot of manifestation.
Mm.
Um, I often teach it to clients that manifestation is a three-step process. You can create everything in these three-step process. And that is the first one is to set your intention of what you want. The third step, we're skipping the second one for a minute. The third step is to receive it. So you set the intention and you receive it. But the second step in between is the void. It's where you
Mm.
make space for it. It's where you take
Mm-hmm.
inspired action. And if you're wondering what inspired action is, Cherie's just described that. It
Mm-hmm.
is, when you're taking that next step that feels inspired, even though it might not seem logical or make sense yet. Sometimes it is in the direction that you want to go. As you said, if you want to create retreats around the world, why not go to a place where they do a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But sometimes it feels like it doesn't make sense. Like me helping a friend with his resume.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like the whole time I was like, this doesn't make sense. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just loving on a friend that is very important to me. Um, what what is this? But it feels so good and so right, and everything in my system is telling me this is where I need to be and this is what I need to be doing right now. But that is the void, right? It That void bridges the intention and the receiving of it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, when you're setting a goal, oftentimes, like, people say, set the goal, take the steps to get there. Well, if you're setting a goal that is so big from where you started, you might not know what the actual steps are to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
if you're
something you figure out on
using,
the way.
yes, yes, whether you're thinking about it logically or more spiritually and more of a ethereal way of doing about it, when you set the intention, you do not know all the steps in order to receive it. So the in between is a void. It is a nothingness that you don't know which way to go. My way of going about it is very much spiritual in nature, so I follow my intuition. Um, I met with somebody yesterday that is a YWAMer, and she was like, "You hear the voice of God," which is like the terminology we used in YWAM, which is a missionary organization that I was a part of. That's my approach to it. But if you're more on the logical side, which I don't like, but I do respect it and it is a valid way of going about things, then you might just, take the step that's in front of you because you will not know all the steps at the same time. And if you try to know it or try to figure it out, oftentimes that's where people end up in analysis paralysis because your brain cannot comprehend it.
Yeah. And as you talk about manifestation, one of the things that I've used as a personal mantra is I only need to be clear on my what I want and my why I want it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the how I allow to reveal itself.
Yeah.
And that's something I was taught also when I was studying high magic in Mexico. My magic teacher would often say, don't worry about the how, because you know what the how does? The how can only be limited to what you know.
Yes.
And there is infinitely more things out there than what you know, and
Mm-hmm.
infinitely
Yeah.
more possibilities than what we know. So if we're so fixated on the how based on what we know, we are actually being so rigid and often closing off opportunity for what's
Mm-hmm.
coming in. But it makes me think of something you were saying earlier when you said, your life, you mentioned something about doing something and then like almost taking a U-turn. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about what it's like for you when maybe you set an intention, like, I want to achieve this, like, I want to write my memoir.
Yeah.
And you have a what and you have a why you want to do it, but life kind of takes you in a different direction. Why do you feel safe doing that?
Mm.
How do you feel, or do you feel like you eventually have to go back? Like, do you feel like, okay, that intention was just to get me to where I am now? Or do you feel like where I am now is a detour, but I should get back? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think sometimes I feel that way, sometimes I don't, but regardless, there's a reason why I wanted to do something. So I was talking to this girl yesterday. She, as I said, she is a YWAMer. YWAM is Youth with a Mission. It is a missionary organization that I was a part of that I consider a cult. If you want to know more about that, listen to episode 1 and 2 of this podcast. Um, but it it brought up something that I've experienced. So when I was in YWAM, I had this vision of me like kind of dancing throughout the Caribbean. At that time, I was focusing on learning dance. So I did go to the States, to Montana, with the same missionary organization, and I studied modern dance ballet, the history of dance, nutrition, anatomy. Like I know a lot of what goes on in the body and those type of things. Um, so I studied all that. But when I was there, I realized I really do not want to become a professional dancer. Like, if anything in the world, that's one thing I don't want to do.
I
And
actually
so
feel like I would love to do that.
she asked me something very specific that gave me clarity that I've never had before. She said, "So, do you think you are running away from dance because it's too hard, or was it never like the thing for you to begin with?" And I said, "I think it was never really the thing for me to begin with, but it was something that I had to do when I had to do it, right?" So I had a vision of like dancing throughout the Caribbean. This month, I picked out a oracle card. So I have a deck that's called what is it called? I don't remember, but it's the surrender deck. It has all cards about surrender. And I picked up a deck, a card. It's called Surrender to Joy. That's very clear and a great card. But the picture that's on it is the exact vision that I had in 2009, 2010 of me dancing around the Caribbean. Now, does it mean that I need to go dance around the Caribbean? Hell fucking no, because I'm not down for that. But to me, it is about something about connection. Does it all make sense to me right now? No, but I do know that I have a podcast called The Dungeon that is focused on connecting the Caribbean and talking about taboo subjects in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
So am I connecting the Caribbean? Yes. Is there more of this vision that needs to come? Yes, I know it. I believe it. But I can't tell you what it is. I
Mm-hmm.
also did not think about this for sure for the last, I mean, for sure since 2012-ish. So 12 years I haven't thought about this, and all of a sudden it comes back, you know? So I think, yes, sometimes I think, oh, maybe I just made a mistake, like this wasn't it. But I'm realizing now that I've lived enough years that it always comes back. Sometimes it comes back in a very short term, you know, a few months, a few weeks. Sometimes it took 12 years for it to come back.
That makes me wonder about the extent of control we have over our life and destiny. You know, we talk
Hmm.
about manifestation, but people also talk about fate. And I'm
Yeah.
always curious about where the line is and if there is a line. Like, is it just all I am creating my reality? So you, whatever dancing around the Caribbean means vision wise, you it could be a metaphor that you've created for yourself
Hmm.
and you've sent this message back to yourself 12 years later, or is it just like something that was scripted somewhere outside of you, that you kind of tapped into? That I don't have an answer to that, but I've been curious, like, what are the limits of I am the creator of my destiny?
I don't
What do you
know.
think?
Because by the way, I did think that maybe I just made that up when I like decided not to dance anymore. That's why I forgot about it because it wasn't important to me. I think we all have free will. I also think there is like a divine path that our souls came here to fulfill. And I see it both as in like God gave you purpose and as in your soul reincarnating from a past life to continue a mission here.
Mm.
But I also believe that we can choose not to fulfill that mission. We can choose not to go about it that way. In addition, I also feel like some people like we put this big thing on purpose. Like you're supposed to reach millions of people and make a whole lot of money and though then you're in your purpose. Like somehow purpose ends up being that for everybody that quote unquote finds their purpose, which I think is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are living out their purpose in the most quote unquote normal ways. And not everybody's supposed to be like center stage and everybody knows their name and they're the best at what they do. But I also feel like there's a lot of people that aren't following in that those desires, like deeper desires within them. So it's a that's like my view so far. I also question it still.
Yeah, I mean, what's tricky for me sometimes is this line between acceptance and perseverance,
Yes.
persistence.
Hmm.
it's like, when do you surrender? What is surrender? When do you surrender? So for example, I always talk about it with, this is gets a little personal, romantic partnerships. I have a certain desire, imagination of how my romantic relationships could potentially be, or at least how they feel. I don't know if I have words for what I'm wanting, but
Mm-hmm.
at least I know what the feeling is I'm wanting. And as my friend, you've seen me struggle with that, like
Yeah.
struggle with situations that just are not it. And I've recently gotten to a place where the last situation really broke me, in a sense where it wasn't like it broke me where I don't believe in love or that kind of thing, but it was just, I don't know if I know enough to be pursuing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think I need to just accept that maybe the way I'm desiring relationships could possibly just not be for me. Maybe I just need to just accept that what is around me is enough and look for the joy and the peace and the beauty in that. But a question I
Mm-hmm.
have is, okay, but where's the conscious creator in that? Like, if I'm the conscious creator
Yeah.
of my reality, is that true? What's the lines? And it's also tricky when we bring in some of, like, even the horoscope stuff and things that are written in the stars, because one
Yes.
interpretation I've gotten of my horoscope is, certainly relationships are going to be challenging for me, right? Like, that's a thing that's written in the stars for me, right?
Okay.
um like, it's not going to be what you see, what you think. It's going to include more than one people, maybe, so it validates a polyamorous thing, or it might last shorter than you expect. But generally it feels like my soul is just trying to figure out how to be okay being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I will then look at the heavens and be like, what the fuck is the point of coming to earth with billions of other people if my whole point is to be alone? Like, if the whole point is to be alone, like, I could have just done that floating around in the ethers. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, sometimes I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And this is also the void. Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I know I have manifestation powers. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure what to manifest or why. And
Yes.
that's it.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that what I think I want to manifest would actually be satisfying.
Yes. I I talked about this just now about, which direction my career or business is going to take. You brought it to relationships, and I've actually been questioning some things the past few days where I literally told a friend of mine on Thursday, I believe, I was like, I'm very monogamous sexually. And then all of a sudden, some things have happened that made me start questioning that. And so I'm in the void right now, too, with that. And I struggle with it because I have this belief that desires are potential seeking expression, right?
Mm.
So if you have a desire, there's a potential there that wants to be expressed. However, I also believe that there is different types of desires. There are desires that are just, I saw something, I want it. It's not deep, but I want it. And then there's desires that to me feels a lot deeper. It feels bigger and grander. Like I like the Caribbean connecting thing, right? It's deep and it's big and it's amazing and I don't really understand it, but I'm ready
Mm-hmm.
for it. Um, and I feel like from coming from the church background, there is a lot of judgment on desires. Like that's not okay and that's not okay and you shouldn't look at this person that way or you should like all this stuff that we grew up with. Um, but I think all desires are potential seeking expression. However, if you're choosing to pursue a desire, there are consequences with it, right? There is the law of cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if I'm in a committed relationship and I decide to go in a monogamous committed relationship and I decided to go do something with someone else, there are consequences there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm well aware of it. So then it becomes that not all desires are worth pursuing based on what your grand goal of things are. And that's okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're here to pursue all of our desires. Some desires just clash and then you have to choose which one do you want more.
Yeah, like my desire to drink wine is constantly clashing with my desire to have abs, like consistently. And I'm just like, Cherise, who's gonna win? Who's gonna win? We don't know. We don't know. There's still
Yeah.
every trainer tells me, Cherise, the alcohol. And I'm like, is wine alcohol though? I mean,
I
is
mean,
it?
Jesus made it.
Jesus made it. So yeah, I agree with you. And I guess maybe, we can then maybe it doesn't have to be that serious. In the sense that like life is one big playground of possibility.
Yeah.
And yeah, you move one thing, it's gonna have a effect. And you just get to play around with the causes and effects and you decide what you want to experience.
Yeah.
I think relationally, I've just decided I don't think there's certain causes and effects I want anymore. Like I think I was telling you earlier, I don't want to have sex with strangers. And I mean, I know that could sound
Yeah.
like if someone who's listening to this is very conservative, they'd be like, who has sex with strangers? I have had sex with relative strangers
I
multiple
haven't.
times. I have. But currently I don't because of the
Yeah.
cause and effects of what I've experienced, right? And it's not judgment, it's not right or wrong. It's just like, not what I want to experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I agree that you have to we have to grade what desires we want. So again, let's go back to the void as well. I mean, maybe we don't have clarity on what's coming next, but what do we want to come next? And how
Yeah.
do we make decisions that are in alignment with that? So again, Cherise wanting to have a certain washboard abs cannot be drinking wine every day because she doesn't know what's coming next, because I don't
Yeah.
currently have anything booked. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
align with what's coming next?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think it's about um combining desires too, right?
What
Like
do
I
you mean?
feel like the idea of polyamory is is to me a combination of desires.
Hmm.
The way that I look at it, right? There are
Yeah, for
people
me,
that
it's
like to
freedom and
have
belonging
multiple, yeah, there's
at the
people
same
that want
time.
multiple partners and at the same time they want to be open about it, right? Because the way that I grew up is like you have one person and that person you stick with them. And if you go out and have another person, that's cheating, that's evil, right? So I
Hmm.
feel like polyamory is like a acceptance of all of the different desires and I think sometimes we think a desire clashes, but there is a world out there where they can be combined and be okay.
Hmm. And
And
then
so,
maybe this is when we have to get to the why more than the what.
yes, yes,
So I think what we want is often because we attach a certain why to it. So I
mm-hmm,
want this what because I think it's going to give me this. That's the why.
yes, yeah,
But I think if we focus more on the why and are a little more flexible with the what, that could
mm-hmm,
shift. So for
yeah,
me, I've even been thinking real recently, I think well, I think it's possible for me to be monogamously exclusive with someone, at least sexually. I do
mm-hmm,
see love openly, so I think the way that most people organize their monogamous relationships, where it's almost like this emotional exclusivity as well, would not work for me because
yeah,
I don't understand how you measure emotional exclusivity, to be honest. I think that's not really something you can measure. But it's
No,
just, but I
it's hard.
do, my intention is to show up open-heartedly in my connections. So I've been thinking about that, and there's this term I've come up on recently, which is called ambiamorous, which is like I
Hmm.
could be monogamous, I could be polyamorous, I could be this, I could be that, but
Mm-hmm.
more than anything else, it's what's my why? And my why, more than anything, is I want to feel like I belong, and I also want to feel freedom. And I'm choosing that those things can coexist. And as
Yeah.
long as whatever the arrangement is, as long as I, within myself, I know I have to take personal responsibility, but also within our agreements, feel both belonging and freedom,
Hmm.
then I'm good. That's my why. So the
Yeah.
what could shift and change, which
Yeah.
I guess the what is kind of like the how in that regard. Um, but the why is those two feelings.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because it, but if I think about it too, I think a lot of what we do with our authenticity is because of that, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about being authentic and being open and proud about your authenticity, whatever that is. But that's also in order to kind of match desires. You feel the need to belong because we all do as human beings, but at the same time, you don't belong where you've been planted originally, or even how you chose to go about things originally. So then you choose to be authentic. Some of those people might fall away. Some of it, some of them might even attack you sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But you do move closer towards finding a space where you're accepted, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And so your why then for speaking out and coming out as your authentic self, and I don't mean just, sexually, I also mean like, coming out as YWAM is a cult, coming out
Mm-hmm.
as I'm no longer Christian. All that stuff are forms of me coming out
Mm-hmm.
that is me kind of matching desires, the desire to belong and the desire to stand on my truth, both at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, because
Mm-hmm.
that I did not have the way that I grew up and where I come from.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe that is exact. So what the void is, if we're taking it back to some level of personal autonomy, because I think I want to get to a place where it's not just like, oh, I'm victim to this void.
Mm-hmm.
Personal, that's where I'd like to be. If we take it to some level of personal autonomy, the void could be just that space where we're playing around with the configuration of things and the
Yes.
configuration of our desires to see
Yes.
like, okay, how I keep moving this desire here, but then this one goes all the way down. Don't really
Yeah.
want that. So how can I manipulate it so, things fit a little bit? And so yeah, there's uncertainty because it's experimentation. It's experimentation.
Hmm.
Really, that's what it is.
That just gave me a lot of clarity. I
Mm,
feel like my coaching, as a coach, I'm an expert at the void.
mm-hmm,
I'm an expert at not knowing what is or what needs to come or how it's gonna work out. And yet, I help people figure that out.
mm-hmm,
And I'm so okay with the void. I do freak out from time to time, like, let's be honest. But I'm so okay with the void because I've lived it almost my entire adult life. I've never settled for just, oh, you gotta do this because you want that. No, 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 no. I want that, but I don't want to do that. Or I don't want to do this. So I need to find a way to get to that without doing this. And I'm
well,
okay with taking the time to find it, but I'm not gonna do this. Like I can guarantee you. I'm not doing it.
that is so true. That's so true. And ultimately, it's funny because even just in our willingness to do that, we're doing the same thing, meaning people think to go through life, you have to be very sure about what you want to do. And we're
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I don't. I can just experiment. I can test
Yeah.
things out. Like, and that's the void in and of itself. Like this
Yeah.
kind of it's mirroring onto itself in that regard. Um, yeah, part of my challenge, sure, like money wise, if I wanted, I did say money was one of the things I'm focused on, and I am. But
Mm-hmm.
there are particular constraints I've put on it. I'm not gonna work a 40-hour week. It's not happening. I'm not interested in that. I will find a way that feels more in alignment with my well being, that feels more in alignment with nurturing myself. And my life isn't about my work, but my work is interwoven seamlessly into my life. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it feels like this void because it's not necessarily the most popular way. There are people who can guide
Yeah.
us. Oftentimes, there's someone who's done something similar before, but it's experimenting. Now, what I think is also important to note is societally, we've often undermined this idea of experimentation. And like, you should just do things a way that has been prescribed. But
Yes.
what if this is life? What if at the end of the day, honestly, life is not that serious? We're all here to just be playing around with desires. And we're just playing and seeing what happens. We're all going dead, baby. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Yes.
we're all
Yes.
gonna die at some point. When we die, it's done. I mean, sure, afterlife, if you believe in heaven and hell, I mean, I don't know what to tell you about that part. But but as far as I know, this experience of myself will end at a certain point, and then it will just be like, so if I go back to even myself questioning earlier in this conversation, why make one decision over the other? I'm going to make it based on your oracle card. I'm going to surrender to joy because I think joy
Yes.
feels nice. Maybe if I was a
Yes.
person who thought pain felt nice, I would make choices based on pain. Some people do. Some people
Yes,
do,
they
you
do.
know?
Yeah.
And I will have to admit, I do think there's a part of me that's addicted to pain. I think just like how,
Yeah.
a baby who's born from a mother who's on opioids gets born with an opioid addiction. I think
Mm.
as humans, we are born often from people who are addicted to trauma and like deep in trauma. And so we subconsciously don't even realize it. We're addicted to these painful situations. And
Mm.
that's something I've had to consciously say in the relationship space, for example. So much dissatisfaction has happened there. I'm like, sure, I feel there's an addiction here, right? And
Yeah.
how are
Yeah.
we gonna wean ourselves off of this addiction and explore another possibility? So I'm going to try to explore joy as
Yeah.
the reason why I would experiment in one direction over the other, understanding that at the end of the day, it don't matter, come here, go dead anyway.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. We're all experimenting,
yeah.
and that's it. I had an affirmation for a long time that said joy, I allow joy to be my guidance system.
Hmm.
And I guess this card is taking me back to that, you know. I allow joy to be my guidance system, and I make decisions based on joy, not based on pain, as you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Make
Yeah.
decisions based on pleasure. So that's how we can in that's how we can inch our way around the void, in the void, within the void. We don't even need to escape it. Just,
Yeah.
explore what joy is in the void.
Yes. And I believe that's a good place to end it. You
I think
agree?
so too.
Yeah. This was a chill, beautiful episode. It's not one of those revolutionary, we're gonna call people out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it
So,
wasn't one of those, and it's not one like saying really raunchy things,
you know,
but I think it's still valuable.
yes, very
Sure.
valuable. So, if you have anything to say, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please share it on Spotify. That's like our main place, but you can also share it on YouTube or you message me at Hey Shadia on Instagram and Facebook. Charisse has a podcast. It's called Adventure in Authenticity. Check it out. There's 2 episodes on there with me. But check out the other ones because you've been listening to this one already. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, that's it. Right?
that's it.
Anything
Thanks
else?
for listening. No, I'm
All
good.
right.
Thank you all for listening.
All right. See you on the next one. We got two more episodes with Sharice, and then she gonna go gone, baby.
Take a break.
All right, bye.
Bye.